In the autumn of 1971, a curious object appeared on record shop shelves. An album with no title, no artist name, and no description of any kind. Its cover featured a framed painting of a stooped old man carrying a bundle of sticks nailed to a crumbling wall. For most bands, it would have been commercial suicide. For Led Zeppelin, it was a statement of purpose. This was their fourth album. No title, no names, just 4 symbols, one for each member.
They were said professional suicide to release an album with nothing on it whatsoever, apart from the symbols. And what do those symbols mean?
It was their answer to critics, their declaration of independence, and their boldest musical statement yet.
I knew that we were getting a lot of hammerings from different people. The critics, they were saying, oh, it's a hype, it's a hype, it's a hype. That is the reason why on the 4th album there's no title on it. She said, you know, might just as well, what if they say it's a hype, well then this is a good way of saying it isn't a hype, by untitling it and saying, well here we are, you know. It's not being sold by the name of the band, it's the content of the material.
From the moment the needle dropped, it was clear. This was not a retreat from experimentation, nor a rehash of past glories. This was the sound of a band entirely in control, refusing to explain themselves, letting the music do all the talking. Led Zeppelin IV, often referred to by that placeholder name, although the band never called it that, is among the most successful and influential records in rock history. Selling over 37 million copies worldwide, it redefined the possibilities of what a rock album could be. This is the full story of its creation, its sound, its reception, and its legacy. A story of artistic risk, cultural rebellion, and musical brilliance that still echoes through the decades.
Is there still time to change the road you're on? Remember that.
To understand the context of Led Zeppelin's 4th album, one must look first at the reaction to its predecessor. Led Zeppelin III, released in October 1970, surprised fans and critics alike with its heavy emphasis on acoustic arrangements and folk-inspired melodies. While previous albums had thundered with distorted riffs and relentless energy, this one pulled back, exploring British traditional music, blues reinterpretations, and pastoral serenity. Although the album topped charts on both sides of the Atlantic, the critical response was lukewarm at best. Many reviewers accused the band of losing its edge or retreating into introspection.
The 3rd album had been received with a little bit of disdain, even by their hardcore fans over here, because a lot of people considered it a little bit too folky.
3 albums behind them, but what made it quite interesting was the fact that the press had been quite critical about Led Zeppelin III in this country.
Robert Plant, who had taken a more active role in the lyric writing and conceptual tone of the album, later described the criticism as disheartening. Jimmy Page, always deeply involved in production and sequencing, felt personally slighted.
If you've listened to all the albums, you'll be able to listen to something and say, that sounds like Zeppelin, because it's a sound, you know.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, each album is very different. There's a lot of different things on each one.
Yeah.
And I thought 3 was especially different from 1 and 2, which were basically very heavy sort of music. And there's a lot of acoustic stuff on 3.
So when it came time to plan their next record, Led Zeppelin knew 2 things. First, they wanted to let the music speak for itself, without promotion, without press, and without preamble. Second, they were determined to make something extraordinary.
They desperately wanted to do something to appease the British media, and more to the point, they wanted to make their stamp on the UK.
I think up to that point, everything had been a whirlwind, from '68 when they formed,
to 71, and it was the first time I think they all took stock, and that's why the album comes out in a very measured way.
The fact there was no title on the cover. It didn't say Led Zeppelin anywhere on the outer sleeve of the album, which caused panic and confusion at Atlantic Records, particularly in America, where they thought, what are these guys doing? How are we going to sell an album with no name on the cover? You've got to have Led Zeppelin on the cover.
Page later said, "We just decided that we would not put any information on the album. None whatsoever. It was a response to the critics, really. We were sick of being judged by people who didn't understand what we were doing. This was not petulance, it was strategy." By refusing to label the album, Zeppelin ensured that every person who picked it up would do so without preconception. The anonymity wasn't just mystery for mystery's sake. It was about control. Control of the narrative, control of the experience, and above all, control of the music.
The album came off the back of the mysterious and slightly more folky Led Zeppelin III and took everyone by surprise. But why?
The recording sessions that birthed Led Zeppelin IV took place at an unlikely location, Headley Grange, a large, drafty 18th century manor house in Hampshire, once a workhouse for the poor. The building had become a makeshift residential studio thanks to the Rolling Stones' mobile studio, a truck filled with state-of-the-art recording equipment that could be parked on the lawn.
This is probably the first major mobile studio ever made.
The appeal of Headley Grange was its freedom. The band could live and work there without distraction. No studio clocks, no pressure, no interference.
It wasn't all about recording, it wasn't there's a studio time 2 till 4, it was we'll go in when we want to go in. If we want to go in at 7, we'll do it. If we want to do it at 2 in the morning, we'll do it. And I think a lot of the music came out in a very relaxed way because of that lack of discipline.
This informal, domestic environment allowed ideas to emerge organically. Songs could start as riffs, jokes, or fragments, and grow into full compositions as the band played, improvised, and reworked them in real time. It was there that the band found the sound that would define the album: earthy, natural, spacious, and dynamic. Engineer Andy Johns, working alongside Jimmy Page, embraced a philosophy of room miking, distant miking, and ambient layering.
I think the sound that Page wanted quickly, became apparent. He wanted a vast, expansive sound, which that album has got. And again, it was down to him.
This was particularly evident in how they captured John Bonham's drums. For when the Levy breaks, Bonham set up his kit at the base of the stairwell, while Page positioned the microphones several floors above. The resulting echo and power were unprecedented. It wasn't just technical trickery, it was atmosphere, a stark contrast to the tight, often sterile confines of traditional studio recordings in London or New York, where isolated booths and rigid setups often dampened the organic interplay between musicians. Headley Grange had a feel, and that feel can be heard on every second of the record. Page described the sessions as unusually fruitful. We were in such a great creative space. Everyone was contributing. Everyone was open.
The way I see recording is to try and capture the sound of the room vibe and the emotion of the whole moment, and try and convey that across. That's the very essence of it. And so consequently you've really got to capture as much of the room sound as possible.
The most distinctive element of Led Zeppelin IV remains its visual presentation, or rather, the lack of it. The front cover gave no indication of the band or the album title. Instead, it showed a framed painting of an elderly man seen from behind carrying a bundle of sticks. The picture was mounted on a cracked and peeling wall, suggesting decay, perhaps even obsolescence. Inside the gatefold sleeve were 4 cryptic symbols, each chosen by one band member to represent himself. Jimmy Page's cymbal, often called Zoso, is the most enigmatic. Its origins remain a subject of speculation. Some suggest it's derived from an ancient alchemical glyph. Others believe Page designed it himself, using arcane references to astrology and numerology. He has never explained it publicly. John Paul Jones selected a triquetra interwoven with a circle. This symbol can be found in various medieval texts and is thought to represent a person of confidence and competence. John Bonham's 3 interlocking circles form a design that has multiple interpretations. It's found in ancient alchemical texts, as well as in modern branding. Some believe it symbolizes the trinity of man, woman, and child. Others simply note that it resembles the logo of Ballantine beer. Robert Plant's symbol, a feather within a circle, was drawn from the mythology of the lost continent of Mu. It is said to represent truth and justice, and may also allude to the Egyptian goddess Ma'at. The artwork, designed in part by Page and with contributions from the band, was intended to feel timeless, neither modern nor nostalgic, neither rooted in the 1970s nor fully separate from it. It was, like the music inside, something apart.
Page said to the others, okay, what I want you to do is go away and come up with a sign that represents you.
The first track on the album, Black Dog, is as unrelenting as it is disorienting.
Hey, mama said the way you move, gonna make you sweat, gonna make you cool.
The title was inspired not by lyrics or a theme, but by a stray Labrador retriever that wandered around the grounds of Headley Grange during recording. The song's stuttering, syncopated riff came from John Paul Jones, who wanted to craft something as complex as James Brown's funk, but in a hard rock setting.
I'm trying to set the way you swing, gonna make you burn, gonna make you sting.
The rhythm is famously difficult to follow. Bonham lays down a solid 4/4 beat, while Page and Jones play riffs that leap across the bar lines. Plant enters with a swaggering vocal line that mimics the riff, creating a call and response tension that defines the song.
I said the way you move, gonna make you sweat, gonna make you cool.
The lyrics are laced with desire, frustration, and carnal energy. It's a prowling song, both muscular and sly, and sets the tone for the rest of the album.
Hey, hey, mama, said the way you move, going to make you sweat, going to make you groove. I mean, for God's sake, that's almost like sexually transmitted disease spiel at its best, isn't it, really?
This is a band unafraid of risk, unafraid to confuse the listener in pursuit of something bigger. The song's structure is unconventional, rejecting typical verse-chorus-verse form. Instead, it stops and starts, lurching forward like an animal in a cage. That tension is part of its appeal.
Take too long for I found out what people mean by down and out.
And those little bits of supposedly outtake just give it it's like a little bit of fresh air. It's like a bit of reality. Oh, they're not that. To me, I never even thought they were outtakes. I just thought they're right. That's part of the track.
Plant's vocals, recorded with little reverb and laid almost dry into the mix, feel close and commanding. He growls, moans, and wails, embodying the frustrated seduction the lyrics hinted at. Page's guitar tone is thick and crunchy, achieved through layering multiple takes and running his Les Paul through a Marshall stack. John Paul Jones's contribution to the arrangements cannot be overstated. The descending chromatic bass line creates a sense of, descent, of falling into something irresistible and dangerous. Live, Black Dog became a staple of the band's setlists, often extending into long call and response exchanges between Plant and the audience. It remains one of Zeppelin's defining tracks, equal parts brute force and rhythmic sophistication.
And you've got the solo at the end of the track. I mean, it's a complete Led Zeppelin, yardstick. It is a Led Zeppelin yardstick, and I think, again, it says everything about the fun they were having. It was relaxed, it was spontaneous.
The second track, Rock and Roll, emerged from a spontaneous jam during the recording sessions. Bonham began pounding out the classic Little Richard-style rhythm of Keep a Knockin', and within seconds, the rest of the band joined in. What resulted was a blistering homage to the early architects of rock music, Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, and Little Richard among them. Page's tearing guitar lines are matched by Jones's honky-tonk piano playing, and Plant's vocals are pure energy. The song is both a tribute and a declaration. Led Zeppelin were not abandoning their roots. They were revitalizing them. It's been a long time since I rock and rolled, Plant wails, capturing both nostalgia and defiance. The band's performance is raw, tight, and exuberant, showing their deep appreciation for rhythm and blues while injecting it with thunderous force. Clocking in at just over 3.5 minutes, it's one of the shortest and most straightforward tracks on the album, but no less impactful. The immediacy of its rhythm and the clean-cut arrangement harken back to the band's early influences. Page plays a 1959 Les Paul through a cranked Marshall amp, capturing a tone that is both biting and buoyant. Bonham's drumming is particularly notable here. He maintains a relentless shuffle that propels the song forward with unflagging energy. Unlike the rhythmic complexity of Black Dog, Rock and Roll sticks to a 4/4 swing, making it a favourite among fans and a frequent opener in live sets. Interestingly, the song almost didn't make it into the album. It began life as a warm-up jam, not a composed piece. But once the energy took hold, it became clear to the band they had something essential on their hands.
They were working on the track Four Sticks, which was just not coming together. And John Bonham went off into this doodle, which was basically the drum part for Keep a Knockin' by Little Richard. Page instinctively fell into the riff. They recorded about 12 seconds of it and it broke down, but then they thought, hey, we got something here. So Four Sticks was temporarily shelved and they went on and recorded Rock and Roll.
Jones's piano, reminiscent of Jerry Lee Lewis, was added late in the session and gives the track a rollicking, celebratory tone. It's not just a song about music, it is music celebrating itself. Plant's vocal takes were delivered with minimal overdubs, giving the song a spontaneous, live-in-the-room feel. Lyrically, it may seem simple, but Rock and Roll is doing something clever. It's not merely nostalgic, it's reclaiming a lineage. By placing it second on the album, the band signalled that they hadn't forgotten where they came from, even as they pushed boundaries elsewhere.
Rock and Roll was rather like Black Dog said, this is Led Zeppelin back powerful and heavy. Rock and Roll was also saying, this is Led Zeppelin, traditional Led Zeppelin. We know all about rock and roll music.
It's a reminder that for all their mysticism, fantasy and sonic experimentation, Led Zeppelin were, at heart, a rock and roll band. Track 3 is perhaps the most delicate and mysterious of the album, The Battle of Evermore. It's an acoustic ballad driven by mandolin, an instrument Page borrowed from Jones, and it features Robert Plant's only recorded duet with another vocalist, Sandy Denny of Fairport Convention, creating a musical dialogue that feels lifted from ancient myth.
I hear the forest thunder down in the valley below.
The lyrics are filled with medieval and fantastical imagery, kings, darkness, fire, and angels, blurring the line between Tolkien-esque fantasy and apocalyptic vision. The song evokes a sense of dread and grandeur, all the more powerful for its subtlety. The sparse instrumentation and the interplay of voices create a ghostly, timeless effect, demonstrating Zeppelin's range and fearlessness in exploring different musical worlds. The genesis of the song came from a mandolin riff Page was experimenting with at Headley Grange. He and Plant quickly built the song from that sketch, drawing inspiration from Plant's recent fascination with Arthurian legend, Celtic mythology, and the work of J.R.R. Tolkien. The lyrics, with lines like "The Dark Lord rides in force tonight," echo motifs from The Lord of the Rings, but they also reflect the anxiety and societal unrest of the early 1970s. It's not merely escapist fantasy, it's mythology as a mirror. Sandy Denny's performance is essential. Page specifically asked her to sing on the track, recognising her deep roots in English folk. Her ethereal tone and vocal authority give the song its eerie balance. The contrast between her clarity and Plant's emotional vibrato adds a theatrical tension, like a bard's prophecy being answered by a haunted warrior. The two voices do not harmonise so much as challenge and illuminate each other. It's a true duet in the dramatic sense. Instrumentally, the track is understated but rich. Page's mandolin chimes through the verses and there is no percussion, no Bonham, giving the track a floating, almost suspended quality.
Queen of Light took her bow, then she turned to go. The Prince of Peace embraced the...
Jones adds subtle touches of acoustic guitar and perhaps the faintest trace of organ, though these elements are more inferred by careful listening than confirmed through session documentation, which remains limited for this track. It's a song of atmosphere, not climax, and in that way it prepares the listener for the journey still to come. Though less cited in popular surveys of Zeppelin's best songs, The Battle of Evermore remains one of their most ambitious and artistically coherent compositions, a meditation on myth, time, and fate, rendered in the voice of two minstrels. The fourth track is not just the centerpiece of the album, it's one of the most iconic songs in rock history. Stairway to Heaven is a journey. It begins with a gentle acoustic guitar and recorder motif and gradually builds in volume, instrumentation and intensity until it reaches an electrifying climax. Structurally, it defies standard songwriting conventions. There's no chorus, no repetition, just a steady build, a musical ascent. Plant's lyrics have been scrutinised for decades. There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold, he begins, and from there the song unfolds as a mysterious allegory about materialism, choice and spiritual searching.
There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold, and she's fine.
The recording of the song was meticulous. Page's solo, recorded in just a few takes, has become a rite of passage for guitarists. It is melodic, emotional, and masterful. Never showy, always serving the song's narrative.
I think it is the perfect arrangement. Although it's an 8-minute song, the build is absolutely magical. And there's a funny thing that happens when you hear it on the radio or a mate plays it again. At first you think, oh no, not Stairway to Heaven again. And almost in spite of yourself, you find yourself getting drawn into it, and it finishes and you think, yeah, that's great.
Bonham's entrance halfway through lifts the entire piece, adding momentum and gravitas. By the final moments, with Plant's final lines echoing into silence, the song has transformed from a soft folk tune into a thunderous rock anthem.
And she's buying a stairway to heaven.
Its power lies not only in its performance, but in its restraint, progression, and balance. The construction of Stairway to Heaven spanned several months, with bits and pieces developing during rehearsals and sound checks. Page recorded the famous opening acoustic passage using a Harmony Sovereign acoustic guitar, while the recorder part, played by bassist John Paul Jones, gives the intro a Renaissance air. The decision to structure the song as a continuous crescendo was intentional. It mimics a spiritual or emotional awakening, building from reflection to revelation. Robert Plant has said the lyrics came to him quickly, almost in a trance-like state. Much like the symbols on the album's inner sleeve, the words are open to interpretation. Some view it as a critique of consumerism. Others see a spiritual quest. Lines such as, "There's still time to change the road you're on," have been quoted in everything from graduation speeches to sermons. For instance, it was famously cited in a 1993 commencement address at the University of California, where the speaker used it to encourage self-reinvention. Page's electric solo, soaring over the final crescendo, was played on a Fender Telecaster through a Supro amplifier, the same setup he used on the debut album. Despite its iconic status, the solo was recorded quickly. Page preferred spontaneity to laborious perfection, and the solo's rawness is part of its enduring magic. Bonham's drums crash in with the kind of weight only he could deliver, making the climax all the more powerful. The track concludes with a dramatic drop in volume and tempo. Plant's voice, almost a whisper, delivers the haunting final line, "And she's buying a stairway to heaven." Then, silence. No fade out, no resolution, just a lingering sense of awe. It's a performance that refuses easy categorization, neither ballad nor anthem, neither folk nor metal. Stairway to Heaven is a statement, a spell, a song that seems to exist out of time. The fifth track, Misty Mountain Hop, opens the second side of the album with a jolt of electric keys and rhythmic groove. John Paul Jones's Fender Rhodes sets the tone, locking in tightly with Bonham's drums to create a buoyant, almost danceable pulse. Page's guitar jabs slice into the rhythm with controlled bursts, while Plant's vocal performance is laid back yet teasing, inviting the listener into a surreal journey of disillusionment and defiance. The song's title is an overt reference to J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth, but its lyrics are grounded in real-world frustrations. It recalls a specific incident in London's Hyde Park, when Plant and friends were confronted by police simply for loitering and presumably smoking cannabis. Rather than reacting with anger or violence, the response is escapist and humorous. "I'm packing my bags for the misty mountains." This retreat into fantasy is not just a literal escape, it's a metaphor for freedom, for detachment from the constraints of mainstream society. The playfulness of the lyrics contrasts sharply with the tightness of the performance. Plant lists bizarre observations and whimsical musings, as if hallucinating his way through an encounter with authority and social conformity. It's a protest song disguised as a psychedelic vignette, one that captures the zeitgeist of the early 70s counterculture. The notion of the Misty Mountains becomes a stand-in for an idealized, untouchable refuge from bureaucratic oppression and modern alienation. Musically, the band achieves a kind of levitating groove. Jones's electric piano work anchors the song with unexpected elegance, while Bonham offers punchy fills that add tension beneath the laid-back vocal delivery. Page plays a choppy rhythm guitar part that never dominates, but remains sharp and expressive. The track's arrangement feels effortless, but its structure is carefully built, using repetition and variation to create a mood that is both light-hearted and loaded with meaning. Misty Mountain Hop also marks a stylistic midpoint on the album, bridging the mystical introspection of the Battle of Evermore and Stairway to Heaven with the rhythmic rock of Four Sticks. It's playful but pointed, mystical yet mundane. The blend of fantastical and mundane, protest and play, makes it a unique piece in the Zeppelin catalogue, and an enduring fan favourite. Four Sticks is one of the most rhythmically complex songs in Led Zeppelin's catalogue. Its name, surprise surprise, comes from John Bonham's decision to play the drums with 4 sticks, 2 in hand, in order to generate a more forceful, unrelenting impact. The song's backbone lies in its shifting time signatures, combining 5/8 and 6/8 rhythms that defy traditional rock structure and keep both the listener and performers slightly off balance. It's a masterclass in tension and syncopation. Recording the song proved difficult. According to engineer Andy Johns, the band struggled to get the right take, Bonham especially. The unconventional time structure meant even a player of his talent had to concentrate intensely, often losing himself in the beat's looping complexity. When the right performance finally came together, it was an act of sheer stamina and technical mastery. Musically, Four Sticks is drenched in a swirling, almost hypnotic atmosphere. Page's guitar riff is jagged and modal, with an Eastern tinge. He layered it with overdubbed acoustic phrases to add dimension. Jones contributes a Moog synthesizer line that weaves through the mix, hinting at the kind of textures he would explore more deeply in later years. The result is dense, experimental, and almost psychedelic. Lyrically, the song is abstract. Plant delivers lines with cryptic imagery. Oh, baby, it's crying time. Oh, baby, I've got to fly. The themes suggest movement, transformation, perhaps even spiritual awakening, but the meaning is deliberately elusive. His phrasing follows the irregular rhythm of the music, sometimes lagging behind or leaping ahead of the beat, adding to the track's unpredictable feel. Though rarely performed live due to its demanding arrangement, Four Sticks represents the band's commitment to pushing boundaries, not just in volume and bravado, but in structure and texture. It's a testament to their collective willingness to explore beyond the conventional limits of rock and blues. Far from a straightforward groove, it's a jagged mosaic, each piece demanding precision, power, and daring. That it sits on the same album as Stairway to Heaven and Rock and Roll is a sign of the breadth Zeppelin were willing to risk, and the rewards they reaped from doing so.
Have you done anything different on your new album?
There's two tracks with acoustic.
Yeah.
Going to California, that's mandolin again and acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
As a stark contrast to the thunder of Four Sticks, Going to California is soft, introspective, and wistful.
Made up my mind, making a new start. I'm going to California with an aching in my heart.
Built around Page's acoustic guitar and Jones's mandolin, the song reveals a side of Plant rarely seen at such length, sensitive, romantic, and hopeful. The lyrics are partly inspired by Joni Mitchell, a figure both Page and Plant admired, but the song also reflects the disillusionment that can accompany fame and constant touring. Earthquakes, women, and misadventures pepper the verses, yet the refrain, with its dream of a flower-crowned girl, holds on to hope.
Lovely droning D sound. It's a beautiful song. The melody is absolutely lovely. And by their admission, it was written as an homage to Joni Mitchell, the Lady of the Canyon.
The production is spare, with no drums and only gentle layers of instrumentation. It's a song that invites quiet reflection, a moment of pause before the album's final storm. The origins of the track can be traced to a period when the band found themselves increasingly enchanted by American West Coast music. The title itself evokes a destination both literal and metaphorical. California represented freedom, artistic exploration, and a kind of countercultural idealism. Plant's lyrics draw from personal experience, including a rocky flight into Los Angeles and an unrequited longing for connection amidst chaos.
My chances on a big jet plane, never let them tell you that we're all the same.
Musically, the track is anchored by Page's finger-picked acoustic work, intricate, fluid and richly layered. Jones's mandolin adds shimmer and rustic colour, evoking folk traditions without sounding derivative. The absence of percussion shifts the dynamic inward, allowing the vocal performance to take centre stage. Plant sings with a delicacy rarely heard elsewhere on the record, conveying vulnerability and yearning in equal measure. Going to California is not just a pastoral interlude, it's an emotional reset. Placed strategically before the apocalyptic finale, the song offers introspection in contrast to the surrounding sonic weight. Its wistfulness is not weakness, its strength drawn from stillness. The longing it expresses feels timeless, a universal ache for peace, for place, for someone to understand. In many ways, it is the heart of the album, the track that shows how broad Zeppelin's emotional and musical range truly was. Though never a single, the song has earned a cherished place in the band's legacy.
The sky was gray. I wondered how tomorrow could ever follow today.
It was frequently performed in stripped-back sets, often as a breather between heavier numbers. Fans respond to its sincerity, to its quiet soul. For all the band's power and swagger, Going to California shows they could still whisper and be heard. The closer, When the Levy Breaks, is unlike anything else on the album or in rock music at the time. Based on a 1929 blues song by Memphis Minnie and Kansas Joe McCoy, the track is completely transformed in Zeppelin's hands. The original, a raw account of the 1927 Mississippi flood, is reimagined here as an earth-shaking lament, stretched into nearly 7 minutes of thunderous, hypnotic groove. Where the original is stripped-down Delta blues, Zeppelin's version is apocalyptic rock, filtered through the band's experimental studio techniques and Bonham's brute power.
You cannot talk about When the Levy Breaks without talking about that drum sound, which is one of the most sampled sounds in history. Everybody from Ice-T to Puff Daddy, Chemical Brothers, the Beastie Boys got into trouble over sampling it. It is monumental. There is no drummer can play that groove like John Bonham did.
The track's most legendary feature is its drum sound. Bonham recorded the kit at the bottom of the stairwell at Headley Grange, while Page and engineer Andy Johns positioned microphones on the upper floors. The resulting reverb, combined with tape delay and backward echo, produced one of the most cavernous, commanding drum sounds ever captured. That beat has since been sampled by countless artists, from the Beastie Boys to Eminem, cementing its status as one of the most influential percussive moments in modern music.
I get asked a lot about the drum sound from When the Levy Breaks with Led Zeppelin, because it was the first time I'd done anything with just 2 mics, and we went to this house called Headley Grange with the Stones truck, and I had actually wanted to go to this other house, but Jimmy thought it was a little too expensive. So we rolled up, and it had this big lobby with stairs going up to landings, kind of like a hotel lobby, and I got a couple of M160s, which are very directional bio mics, double ribbon. I put those about halfway up the first set of stairs and compressed the crap out of them, We also had a thing called a Binson Echo, which is tough to find now, but it's a delay device. You can make the sound fairly easily with anything. And it was the first time I'd really heard Bonzo's drums sound like they did when you stood next to them. And it was the first time he didn't complain either. Because when I got that sound, that was my first reaction. Jesus, he's actually going to be happy at last. So that's how we did that. But good luck in getting that sound again, because you really do need Bonzo.
The arrangement is deceptively simple. A heavy, dragging rhythm, swirling slide guitar, harmonica bursts, and Plant's voice echoing like a distant warning siren. But the cumulative effect is enormous. Page's use of bottleneck guitar and layered harmonics creates a swirling, stormy atmosphere. Jones's bass is deep and unrelenting, a low-frequency anchor that makes the track feel both menacing and inevitable. Plant's lyrics, delivered through layers of effects, borrow some lines from the original 1929 song, but reinterpret them with dread and detachment. If it keeps on rainin', the levee's going to break, becomes not a lament, but a grim prophecy. Unusually, the song does not shift or climax in a traditional sense. It loops and grinds, the repetition building tension instead of resolution. This structure mirrors the song's theme of encroaching disaster, a levee about to burst, unstoppable and implacable. The decision to close the album with this track is bold. It doesn't resolve the themes of the record so much as it leaves them hanging, soaked, battered, and echoing into silence. Live performances of When the Levee Breaks were rare due to its reliance on studio effects and layered textures. Yet its legend grew, not from frequent airplay or chart placement, but from its immense sonic footprint. It is a fitting end to an album that moves between myth, introspection, and sheer sonic force. If Stairway to Heaven is the ascent, When the Levee Breaks is the flood waiting at the bottom, waiting to wash it all away.
This was, they were said, professional suicide to release an album with nothing on it whatsoever, apart from the cymbals.
Upon its release in November 1971, Led Zeppelin IV made an immediate impact. Despite, or because of, its lack of title and promotional material, it quickly climbed the charts. In the UK, it debuted at number 1. In the US, it reached number 2 and remained on the Billboard 200 for over 90 weeks. The album's mystique was part of its allure. Fans had to engage with the music without any cues or context. The anonymity was deliberate, and it heightened curiosity. Critics who had previously dismissed the band were forced to reevaluate. Rolling Stone, which had offered mixed reviews of Zeppelin's earlier work, praised the album's diversity and power. Melody Maker called it a turning point. The Times noted how the band had created something raw and cinematic, at once ancient and modern. Yet some reviewers remained skeptical, accusing the band of excess and self-indulgence. It didn't matter. The public embraced the album as few records before it. Radio stations gravitated toward Black Dog, Rock and Roll, and Stairway to Heaven. In the United States, FM radio programmers made Stairway a centerpiece of their playlists, even without it being released as a single. Fans pored over the mysterious symbols and cryptic lyrics, speculating wildly about their meanings. Some believe Page's Zoso emblem held occult significance tied to alchemical texts, while others saw Plant's feather as a nod to spiritual truth. Bonham's interlocking rings were linked to both esoteric Trinity symbolism and the Ballantine beer logo, while Jones's triquetra was interpreted as a mark of integrity and stability. These interpretations, whether accurate or fanciful, only deepened the album's allure and invited listeners to become part of its mythos. Guitarists dissected Page's solos, drummers obsessed over Bonham's fills, high school bands tried to replicate the songs, often finding themselves overwhelmed by their complexity. It was an album that demanded attention and sustained it. By the end of 1972, the album had sold over 8 million copies. It became a permanent fixture on turntables across the world, and solidified Led Zeppelin's place as not only the biggest rock band of their era, but also one of the most enigmatic. It was an event as much as an album, a cultural moment crystallized in vinyl. Led Zeppelin IV also marked a high point in the band's studio innovation. Jimmy Page, who had taken full control of production duties, worked closely with engineer Andy Johns to shape a sound that was simultaneously raw and refined. Page's philosophy was clear. The studio should enhance what the band did naturally, not dilute it. At a time when many producers polished rock into radio-friendly clarity, Zeppelin leaned into atmosphere and power. The use of natural reverb, distance miking and layering became hallmarks of the Zeppelin sound. Bonham's drum sound on When the Levy Breaks remains one of the most recognisable in recording history, influencing everyone from Phil Collins to hip-hop producers decades later. That sound wasn't just about volume, it was about space. At Headley Grange, the band turned the acoustics of a stairwell into an amplifier. The technique was as much about location as equipment. Page was meticulous in layering guitars, often using different mics and amps for each take. He famously said he treated the studio like a painter's canvas, adding and subtracting textures to achieve depth and colour. On Stairway to Heaven, he combined 12-string acoustic guitars, Telecasters and mandolins to build the track's slow evolution. The song's crescendo is not simply louder, it is richer. Jones and Bonham too adapted quickly to the environment. Jones's keyboard and mandolin parts were often recorded late at night, taking advantage of the silence and mood. Bonham, encouraged to experiment, attacked his kit with greater ferocity and nuance, using dynamics in ways that few rock drummers of the era attempted. The result was an album that sounded alive, organic, enormous, and eerily timeless. Zeppelin's technical choices on 4 shaped the way rock music was recorded for decades. Their techniques were studied, borrowed, and revered by future generations, yet they never felt laboured. The record feels intuitive, not academic. It was crafted, not calculated. In the years that followed, the album only grew in stature. It now routinely appears near the top of greatest albums of all time lists from outlets like Rolling Stone, NME, and Q. Stairway to Heaven remains a landmark, frequently topping polls of the best rock song ever written. But the album's endurance isn't built solely on its biggest hit. Every track, from the thunder of Black Dog to the mystical duet of the Battle of Evermore, adds to the mystique. It's an album with no filler, no wasted moments. What's remarkable is how the album transcended its time. Many classic records feel rooted in the decade of their release, reflecting its production styles, cultural references, and prevailing attitudes. Led Zeppelin IV doesn't. It feels elemental. Its influences, folk, blues, mythology, mysticism, are timeless. That's why it continues to resonate with teenagers discovering it for the first time as much as it does with those who bought it on release day. It also helped shape the mythos of Led Zeppelin. The decision to omit the band's name and the album title added a layer of intrigue, making listeners work to understand what they were hearing. That sense of discovery, and the lack of explanation, allowing fans to create their own meanings. It was an invitation into a world that was at once epic and intimate. The impact can be heard in the music of countless artists who followed, from Metallica to Radiohead, from the grunge movement to modern indie rock. Echoes of Led Zeppelin IV are everywhere. Its combination of power and grace, experimentation and tradition remains a blueprint for what a rock album can be. Led Zeppelin IV is more than a classic album. It's a landmark in the history of recorded music. In just 8 tracks, it spans blues, hard rock, folk, and mysticism. It captures the essence of a band at the height of its creative powers, unburdened by expectations and unafraid of contradiction. It's a rejection of industry norms and a blueprint for artistic independence. But more than anything, it is a record that speaks through feeling. It wasn't made for critics. or even necessarily for fans. It was made because the band had something they needed to say, even if they didn't spell it out. The refusal to name the album was not a gimmick, but a challenge. Listen, don't label. And millions did. Over 50 years on, the album's hold has not diminished. It continues to inspire musicians, critics, and casual listeners alike. Its sound is studied, its stories are still debated, and its songs, especially the immortal Stairway to Heaven, still command reverence. It doesn't need to be explained to be understood. That is its genius. Untitled but unmistakable, rooted in tradition but endlessly forward-looking, Led Zeppelin IV remains what it always was: mysterious, masterful, and monumental.